OvalEdge, for those of you that this is new and you haven't heard of us before, or maybe you have and have never had a deeper look, OvalEdge is going to be a data catalog and an end-to-end governance solution. This is one of those things in the industry, when you hear data governance, you're probably familiar with data cataloging. And then there's additional stuff, right? And that stuff needs to be defined, and all of that is important for you to really capture what data governance is. So when we think about where we're at in just the world right now and how we do business, we're really in the data age. When I think of the data age, I'm thinking about analytics, the volume of data that we have in all of our disparate systems. So if you think about your file systems and your analytic and reporting tools, your traditional databases, your data warehouses, data lakes, your ETL and pipeline tools, they all interact with data, and every user and every person at the company you work for interacts with data. And they have different data challenges that we say can be solved through data governance. So to be able to do data governance well, we need to understand, what do we mean when we say data governance? So if you walk out of this room with only learning one thing, think about data governance as more than just a data catalog. It's a data catalog as its foundation, and then we have to think about a couple different things. Those things are going to mainly be revolved around these couple ideas. The idea of managing access to your data and ensuring that data is secure, understanding who has access, how do they gain access, who gives that access, are going to be an important place to start. And then once you have access to data, we need to be able to understand, can we trust it? Where is it? What happened to it before it got to where it was? Where does this data move? When the data moves, what changes happened to it? What's the quality of that data from the point of ingestion all the way out to the point of consumption, maybe through BI or analytics? So when we think about data governance, we're thinking about not only a catalog as that central repository for all of your information, but then to be able to manage data access, data literacy, data quality, compliance and privacy, all in one tool. So one thing that you're going to see about data cataloging and governance in general is that a lot of different products on the market have these things sold as separate products. And so adoption at your companies typically lag, because you have to reintroduce a new tool, a new aspect of a tool, to users that may not be as technical as just your IT team. At OvalEdge, we think that the IT team, your technical users, need to be just as involved as your business users. Those people in the business that are your subject matter experts that see a report and know what that data means, and they have to make decisions off of it. Everyone needs to be involved. So one thing I want you to take a notice of today as we're moving through the UI is that we want you to be able to adapt to it quickly, and so we've tried to make the UI as intuitive as possible. One of the first challenges that we're going to talk about and how data governance starts to help is this idea of managing access and finding information, and how do you understand the information once you've found it. So this is a funny screen. I used to work as a BI analyst, and this was typically the business process flow I would have when I needed data. I'm building a report in Tableau, and I need access to data. I see it in a front-end application. I have a request from an executive, and I need to find where this data's at. I send a message to IT, and I say, hey, do you have the data? And they say, oh, no, but Bob might. And I get sent over to Bob, and then I get sent over to someone else and someone else. And no one really understands the full, vast scope of where's my data, what's happening to it, where is this duplicate data? And then by the time you actually get access to your data or you have data, it's usually stale, it doesn't include everything that you needed, and the process starts over. So it takes a long time to actually be in a position to make a decision from data. You spend most of your time trying to qualify, where is it, how do I use it, can I trust it? So one of the things that we're going to focus on first is just understanding how a data catalog and governance will help you be able to do governance well. So we're here at the Databricks conference, so I want to start off with an example specific to Databricks. But you should know that OvalEdge is agnostic in the type of technology that it's going to support. So whether you do have those file-based systems or SQL systems, NoSQL systems, data lakes, warehouses, EDLs, reporting tools, OvalEdge is going to be able to connect to those things. To be able to crawl and look for metadata and also profile data. That profiling data is going to be a huge component in understanding the quality of your data and being able to understand where it's at, what's happening to it, and its whole lineage. So we have a really vast connector library, but I'm going to go ahead and search in here for the Delta Lake. I click on this, so if I were using OvalEdge for the first time, I wanted to get my hands around the information that was in the Delta Lake. All I would have to do is tell OvalEdge where is the Delta Lake, how do I log into it, and then the first governance specific piece here is I would also need to assign who is the data steward, custodian, and owner of this information. Once I've done that, and I've gone ahead and added that in here, I can set up information about how I would like to crawl and how I would like to profile this source. When I'm talking about crawling, I'm talking about metadata gathering from that source. And then when I'm talking about profiling, we're running queries and algorithms against the data in the system to pull back informative summaries and statistics so you can start to understand and assess the information in that tool. One really cool feature that we have with Databricks is that we have the idea of remote data access management. So not only can we crawl to look for metadata around tables, views, and columns, your procedures and triggers source code, we also can look at how are users set up in that environment, what permission do they have, and then I'll have the ability to sync that access. So this first piece of seeing and answering that question, who has access to what? And then if you'd like to change that from your governance layer and then push access out so that users have better availability to data, you can do that from your governance layer. And you can do this with any of the sources that are part of the OvalEdge connector library. Once I've been able to do that, say I crawl information, I profile information, I then have that user piece where I've now crawled and ingested all those users. I can start to do some comparisons and choose which user setups do I want to keep. So in this instance, I have my Delta Lake in here. I have OvalEdge as master, so I can sync and manage the permissions people have to metadata and data. This is going to be important to understand because one of the main challenges you're trying to solve for when it comes to data access and data discovery and data shareability is you don't want to accidentally give someone access to sensitive information. You're not always sure where that sensitive information exists, and we can feel territorial about giving free access to data because you're not sure how people might use it, what they might find. So with OvalEdge, you're going to be able to be very specific in who can see what. Okay, now for the fun part. I'm going to start to demo the tool a little bit. I'm going to highlight a couple different things. How do we find information? How do we start to understand it? So that'll take a look at data literacy, data quality, data lineage especially as well. That's going to be another Databricks specific. We can actually connect to the workbooks, parse the underlying code, and understand how is information moving into the lake and out of the lake all the way down to that reporting layer. So we're looking at the OvalEdge UI. This is our home screen. This would look different based on the position you held in your company. Business users would see a less full screen, and your more admin technical users would see the screen I'm seeing. But let me go ahead and search for member. I know I have members data that I'm trying to make a decision on. I can use our global search, it has Elasticsearch built into it, and I can search against every single system I've added to OvalEdge, as well as any information I've curated in the environment. So when I say that, I mean think of all of the different tech in your environment. If OvalEdge is connected to it, with a single search, you can search against everything, and then you can look by object level. In this case, I only want to focus in on my tables. I'm looking for a data set, and I can see, even though this table is called user accounts, because it exists in the OvalEdge platform and we've added some literacy to it, I can see that this is holding my members' data. Let me go ahead and click into here. And what you're going to see is really rich information. So we're seeing this user accounts table. It's coming from my retail bank data source. And I've renamed it members data because colloquially around the business, that's how we talk about it. User accounts are members. They're members of the bank. If I didn't know the source system well, I would already be lost. What is a user account? That's not my members data. So in here, we're trying to bring the language you use at your business to the data itself. You then can understand what information can I find in this table. There's a business description describing what information is in this table. You can add a technical descriptions and create direct links to information that it's related to. If I scroll down, I get to see some of that crawled metadata we were able to pick up. So we crawled and picked up the column name, type, and title. And then over here in the top values and all the way to the column on the far right, that's going to be our profiled values section. So as a user that has permission to see data, I can see top values of the data that's been profiled. I can see my null counts within each column. I can see my distinct count, min, and max values as well. So I can start to assess the quality. I just saw a lot of nulls in those columns. Maybe that's fine, maybe it's not. If it wasn't, I could go ahead and report a data quality issue right from the tool. When I report a data quality issue, it'll open up a ticket, it'll open up this index and say, has anyone else noticed any issues? If not, okay, let me go ahead and create a ticket and I can summarize the problem I'm seeing, the severity of the problem. What's great about this service desk request is that all of it's tracked within the tool, and if you're using a tool like Jira or ServiceNow where you're tracking tickets, you can sync those products to OvalEdge as well and manage those tickets. But where the governance comes in is I see Joanna here as my steward of this data set. I'm the owner of it, but I don't handle day-to-day things. My steward does. So when those problems happen, they're going to go off to Joanna. She'll get a notification, and she'll have the responsibility to go up and follow up on the issues that were found. When that happens, you can do that right in OvalEdge as well with our data quality framework. You can write data quality rules that execute against the connected source systems and on their data. OvalEdge is never going to move any data or store data in our platform. You're viewing it because of that live connection. So OvalEdge remains really lightweight in your environment. You don't have risk of moving data and storing it elsewhere. So it'll remain in your source systems, but you still get the value of understanding the data from a safe environment. When we think about data quality, it's also important to understand, how is this information moving? So if I've identified a problem at this table level and I can see that it goes out to many other areas, that's going to be helpful for me to understand, to be able to assess what's going on with my information. So what I'm looking at on my screen right now is the full end-to-end lineage for the user accounts members data. So if I go ahead and I look at this, I can see where the information started, how it's moved through different systems. This is showing it going through an SSIS package even, all the way out to where my table's at. And then I can see this table information ends up on a few different Tableau reports in my ecosystem. If I wanted to understand what was happening in any of these specific objects, I can click into them, and now I'm looking at the report level lineage. So being able to answer questions like, where did this information come from? What happened to it? Who wrote it? All of that information is going to be in OvalEdge as well. If I take a look at this report right here in my lineage, let me go back so I can show you exactly how I got there. When I'm on my lineage and I come to the report for Tableau, I say I want to drill into this transactions area. I can see its reports lineage, and then if I go to the summary screen, I can see a description's been given to my report. And then what's a really cool feature with OvalEdge is that this is actually a Tableau report that we have on Tableau Server coming into the tool. If you're a Tableau user, you'll notice this bottom bar, it's Tableau. It comes through, and you're able to see when was the last time this was looked at by our governance team. Who wrote this report? Who's the steward of this report? So if I have a question or an issue, I can open up the collaboration window. I can see past interactions on this. I could go ahead and tag other users to ask questions so that you can really understand your data in one spot. A really cool feature with OvalEdge as well is that for those tools like Power BI and Tableau where you're consuming analytics, we want to bring your governance to those as well. So say I open this sample report, you'll see pop-ups come up from OvalEdge even in apps outside of the OvalEdge tool, and it will say, hey, you're looking at a certified report. Certification is a process that's important for governance as well. So as an end user, I can see this is a certified report, and then if I wanted to learn about any of these things that are represented on my report, like how is profit being calculated, I can open up that term and learn as a business user. And then if I had an issue, I could say, let me see more information. I can click on that button. It'll open up my OvalEdge environment, and then I'll be able to ask questions of the data owner, steward, or report creator as well. So instead of trying to take a snip and then send it to somebody in IT or maybe BI and say, hey, I have a question, or hey, this looks incorrect, you can get right to the source and know who that person is that can resolve the issue that you may have found. So when we're looking at this screen, the last thing I want to show here before I switch into another use case of data governance is this column detail screen. It's important to understand a few different things here. With OvalEdge, we're not only crawling in looking at metadata from the table level or system level or schema level, we can go all the way down to this column level, which is important because when you think about that, if I have information that's sensitive, I want to be able to get to the lowest level of detail to be able to then protect those data values, both in my OvalEdge environment and then back out to the sources where this data is actually occurring and existing, like my Delta Lake. So in here, we've crawled information, so you see things like column types and lengths and distinct counts. You see the top values that were profiled. You can report data quality rules on the column level as well. But what I want to start to understand is this little button here that says terms, and you see a thumbs up or thumbs down. That's going to take us into a business glossary discussion. Now, for those that aren't familiar with what business glossary is, or when I say data literacy, what do I mean? That one's pretty self-explanatory, but a business glossary gets to help you with your data literacy is one main use case. We'll look at an example for that. But then we also want to look at an example for how a business glossary could help us with that idea of finding, identifying, and protecting sensitive information. So when we think about business glossary, it's going to be information that's structured by domains of data. If you think about your own organization, that's most often going to be your business units, business streams. When you're talking about your data to somebody across departments, are you sure that you're saying the same words and meaning the same things? Or have you been in the situation where I'm saying something, you're saying something, and our reports hold different values, KPIs, we are holding a different definition because of our experience or time at the company, or even just the department we work in? What the business glossary can help you do is encapsulate all of that knowledge and then have it in a governed platform and take these terms and apply it to actual data or reports. So let's take a look at some examples here. So if I continue with that member example, right? I'm defining a member as a person who's applied for a membership and has been accepted, so on, right? I can see what that agreed upon definition is. For terms to exist in the business glossary, it needs to go through a workflow and a governance stream to even get it in here. Once I have this term defined, I can go ahead and set up how is it related to other terms. I can set up detailed descriptions and create links to maybe some of our policies that it applies to. So I can go ahead and click on that and see what our policy is, and you can achieve that policy management within one tool as well. And then you're going to be able to see who's looking at this term, who's using it, who's the owner or steward of this term. What council approved it? I see my legal team approved this, and I can see the date they did that. And then what's really helpful in having a single tool for data governance is that we can manage your data association rules from a business glossary term. And what does that mean? That means my data catalog and my business glossary exist in a single platform. So literacy I set up on a term, KPI, or metric level can be cascaded back to where that data is occurring. So if a member showed up on a report or in a table, I can take this term, take the definition, and I can say, when this is associated to data, carry over these rules, carry over this literacy. When we do that, with terms that are more sensitive, we're going to see some great success in being able to find and identify where that sensitive information exists, even if you haven't located it yet. So let's take an example there. Let's take a simple field of country. Country has been identified as a privacy field. We need to know where our country fields exist across all of our different sources. It's a GDPR compliant field, and I need to report out in an audit everywhere I'm tracking somebody's country of origin. And so I need to know where that exists in all my data sets. Right now, without a tool, whoever is responsible for that tool would need to go query against each individual application that you have data in to try and find where this information's at. And with OvalEdge, we try to make that simple so you don't have to do that. In order to find that information, you're going to have to manually find and apply it to one piece of data. I've done that. I have one column associated with this term I created. It's coming from my MySQL Superstore. And then what I'm going to be able to do is go to my recommendations and say, I'm going to run a AI recommendation against all of my unclassified columns of data. So every single source I've connected into OvalEdge. You can see down here the Databricks Lakehouse is one of those sources. I ran this recommendation, and OvalEdge is going to take a look at the metadata, data, and the pattern of that data as well to try and find what might else be a country field. We then give you the ability to thumbs up or thumbs down the recommendations that came back. So if I've found something that is a country field, I can say thumbs up. That adds it to my associated data dictionary, and when it's associated to that dictionary, it carries over everything that you've set up on that term level. So a business description, any classifications that apply to it, and then down here, this isn't with this example, but you could also restrict that information or mask that information in the tool and back, say, in your Delta Lake. This next example is going to show that. So if I go to my privacy domain again, I'm going to go to my tree structure. The difference here between these two views, if you're really interested, is the tree is showing you published terms. That's what your business users would see. And an admin would also get to see this list view, and you get to see terms that are also being worked on. So you can start to answer questions about maybe what do people have questions about? What are we trying to improve or make clear? What KPIs are we focusing on? You can see what's in the pipeline by looking at what is in a draft status. But in the tree, if I come in here, I'm going to take a look at a social security field. If I go ahead and open up this social security field, I'm going to see that there's a business description associated to it. I think we all might know what a social security is, but for those that don't, it's there. And then down here, we're going to have this manage data associations. And this time I have this masked box checked, and then it's saying mask all the characters of the data that's found with X's, right? It's compliant under CCPA, GDPR, HIPAA are just a few examples. That's going to be modifiable, so if you have different classifications applying to your data, that's customizable by our clients as well that use the product. But in here, I've gone ahead and I've associated that social security field to one column again, and then I went ahead and ran that recommendation. When I've run that recommendation, it brought me back 152 results. You can see some are social security numbers and others are showing this patient ID, and so that's something I'd want to look into. Maybe my health system is tracking social security number under the metadata name of patient ID. And if I didn't know that, if I didn't have this tool, I could just think the patient ID was some arbitrary number and not a social and leave it unprotected. But OvalEdge is able to catch that based on looking at the data and looking at the pattern of that data. So I can thumbs up or thumbs down these recommendations, and OvalEdge will learn from that experience of thumbs upping or thumbs downing a result set. So when I think about that on even a lower level of detail, I have this thing called a governed data query tool in our platform. So if I'm not just looking for social security numbers in general, but I'm looking for a specific social security number under a right to be forgotten or a right to be deleted or right to know request under GDPR or CCPA, the tool can be used to query all of your source systems at one time from this UI. So I don't need to script anything. Again, we're trying to lower that barrier to entry so that users can use this tool and not need to be highly technical, because we want your business to be involved in achieving what they're already trying to do quicker and with more confidence. So in this case, I have Rachel Peters and her social security number. I had a right to be forgotten request come in for her. And I wanted to see, okay, how do I do that? How do I make sure I'm compliant under that standard? I can come in here, add those in, run my govern data query, and then view the results. The results screen is going to show me in all of the different technology that I've connected OvalEdge to, where does Rachel Peters, her name together, or her social appear in any of my systems. So here we see another good example where it caught a social security number, even though the column name is patient ID. Some also say social security number, so that's pretty clear. It picked up both, which is great. But I can come in here and see that that patient ID does have her social. And what's the best thing about OvalEdge and how it helps with Databricks users is that when I find this information in a Databricks environment, I'm going to be able to come and use this tool called Advanced Jobs, where I can come in here and run this job against the source system, where we'll actually encrypt the values back in the Delta Lake. So you're adding security to the lake as well. So you're not only masking or encrypting those values in our platform, but you're also doing it in the platform where that data exists. If I go ahead and show you what that encryption looks like, I set up a second term to be able to show you that. Let me grab that here. So in OvalEdge, you're going to be able to see this. I can come and look at the values that are associated with this and see that encryption carried over. And so if you're using OvalEdge in that way, you can choose to encrypt it, and that's what you'd also see in your Databricks environment. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to lower that barrier to entry, have all of those important functions of governance in a single platform. So you can do that data access management, you can do that data discovery, so I can search against all my connected systems. We have that end-to-end lineage, so you can see where is my information, how is it flowing. You could get really deeply technical in that too. If I wanted to see the exact transformation code in the tool, I can do that. I didn't do that today because that would be a long example to show you, but you can do that within the tool as well. And then just for some confidence and information about us as a company, you know, we have been on the market since 2019, so a relatively new company, but we compete aggressively. And we've had a lot of really great success stories. And if you're interested in who's using us, what industries do we work with, does it matter what type of data we track? It doesn't. We've tried to build the most flexible tool so that whether you're in healthcare or you're a utilities company or you're a financials company, we want to be able to meet you where you're at and be able to help you with your compliance needs, your privacy needs, your data needs. And we've been having great success. We had Forrester do a study on us. They took a couple clients and looked at over the span of 3 years, the expected ROI is 337%, and it only takes 6 months or less to get the value you paid for the product in that time to value and efficiency in your company. This other graph down here with the red box, you can't see it, but it's from Kuppinger Cole. And they did a study, an analyst report, on the 10 leading data catalogs, and we made that list as a product leader as well. And so we're really excited about our growth and really excited about the companies who choose to trust us in helping them achieve their data governance journeys. One thing that I would like to leave you with is if you're looking to understand data governance more, trying to evaluate what tools right for your governance needs, OvalEdge has a free resource called the Governance Academy that can be found on our website. If you just go and search for ovaledgeacademy.com, you're going to be able to come up here, find the Academy, and this is a free resource where you could learn what is governance, what is end-to-end, and you could get even certified in data governance. So this is an online learning library. And if you wanted to, from this point, schedule a demo or learn more, see how the tool might work with your data, you can always reach out to me as well. So at this point, I'll go ahead and break for some questions. We have 5 minutes and 5 seconds. So if anyone has questions for me or our product, we'll walk around.
Oh, very cool. Thank you, Rachel. My favorite was the business glossary. That was very cool. Thank you again, Rachel. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. I'll come over to you. Okay.
First of all, thank you for a very nice presentation. And it looks like whatever we need in data governance, you have created a complete life cycle here. My question is starting from the data access, say for example, I have multiple data sets, and maybe weekly or monthly we get like more data.
Yep.
We wanted to implement the data governance, starting from cataloging and then metadata management and data lineage, starting from the source to the end wherever it is being used. Currently, there are processes like mostly manual. So whatever you have demonstrated here, how much is the manual effort, how much is automated, and if somebody wants to use the tool, what is the learning curve for the team?
Yeah, those are great questions. So the first piece with access, I'll clarify there. With OvalEdge, when you're bringing in all those different types of tools, we'll do access on that system level, schema level, table level, column level. So whether that's a column that's in a file, report, or database, you can be that granular, and then you can protect on metadata and data as well. That's going to be an activity that can be manually set up or automatically set up. If you're already using tools, like you have permissions and structure user set up in your Delta Lake and you want to push that into OvalEdge, you can do that. If you're using Active Directory and you would like to sync OvalEdge to inherit that structure as well, you could do that. So it'll depend on where you're at, the time or what's manual or what's not. But we've had a lot of great success. Our install deployment, it takes less than 2 hours, and then most of our clients within 3 or 6 months will connect to everything in their environment, crawl, profile, have access given. And the adoption time we've seen really successful when you have a governance team in place. And again, under that 6-month threshold, you should be seeing success. Did I touch on everything you said, or did I miss something? Mostly? Okay. If I didn't, you can come back. Oh, so with the Lineage automation as well. So OvalEdge, you can always build Lineage manually, but if you do want our automatic option, that's there. That's going to be OvalEdge looking at crawling the underlying source code of each technology in the Lineage path. So say I have information in source A, it goes through this ETL, it goes into my lake, it goes out to Power BI or Tableau. We'll connect to each of those tools. It's a job that runs and executes. We'll scan the code, pull it into OvalEdge, and then you'll see that diagram I showed earlier. Now, if there's grammar issues or deeply nested things that we need to parse through, there's a resolve screen in as well. Your more technical users would do that, but never at some point would they have to script themselves. The tool walks you through that remediation process as well.
So my question's with the summary page for a table. So if we know that one you have the nulls. If there, how many nulls? If we know we don't have nulls, but we're populating, say, a -1 in a fact table or something, is there a way to customize that so we know what a data error would look like, or in the summary page?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So in here, this idea of having a quality index and being able to report a problem, it would be addressed there. So if you want to set, certain acceptable values for specific columns, you can add that into your column level descriptions. You could add in technical descriptions if you wanted to pull in reusable code, if any of these were calculated fields as well. And then when you do want to check for specific issues that you are aware about, we have that data quality rule framework where you can write these rules and apply them to the table level, column level, and say, hey, these are the expected values. If anything else exists there, throw an error. That'll go through a workflow to that data owner as well.
First of all, thank you for the wonderful presentation. You said that we can encrypt data in the data lake as well. So if someone doesn't have an access to OvalEdge, how would he decrypt that data or see the masked data?
So someone doesn't have access to OvalEdge and they're working in the Delta Lake still? Is that what you're saying? So they don't need to be a user of OvalEdge to see the encrypted data. If they have access to the lake and they're poking around in the lake, the data will be encrypted there. So whether they know how or where that encryption came from really isn't part of the equation. If we've protected it, users that are using that information in the system, they'll see it also encrypted. So if you have permissions to the data and it has been encrypted, so that's going to be achieved by that access management as well. If your role has data permission to be able to see that, you can always reverse it or see it without the rule on top of it.
And that would be done without OvalEdge?
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your questions. Go check the Governance Academy. If you have any more questions, please reach out to Rachel and her team. They'll be around. Thank you so much for joining our session. That's all the time we have. Cheers. Thanks.
Okay.